A world of peace, bathed in a tranquil light, but a shadow of destruction looms over it all. A band of heroes rises to fight this darkness, only to be destined for a terrible end. But one man has a plan to prevent that future. He would become the hero's unseen sponsor, a simple idea that quickly became a very big deal. So let's turn back the page to the very beginning. Our story starts with a man reborn into a noble's body, a noble who, unfortunately, can't even read the local language. A voice calls out, announcing dinner is served. He's greeted by an extravagant feast fit for royalty. After a delicious meal, he's offered a bath. He's living the life of a pampered, useless noble, and honestly, he's enjoying every second of it. But a maid's casual comment about his brother's return, and the mention of his family name, Palladio, suddenly shatters his blissful ignorance. That name is far too familiar, and for all the wrong reasons. The shock is so great he nearly drowns himself in the tub. The name triggers a horrifying realization. He's been reborn into the world of psychedelia, a game he once played obsessively, mastering its every secret and challenge. He remembers the story's ultimate villains, the 5 great sins. And he remembers their very first victims, the corrupt Palladio family. The weight of this knowledge brings him to his knees. He recalls the game's quest to investigate this very family. Now he stands before the mansion he calls home.
He is Alon Palladio, the disposable third son and the story's first casualty.
He's so desperate he'd rather go back to his overworked old life. This life of luxury means nothing when he's on a 10-year timer. And to top it all off, he got 0 special perks for his trouble. But then a realization dawns on him. Knowing the game's story is the same as knowing the future. He could simply eliminate the causes of destruction beforehand. He resolves to reform the 5 great sins while they're still just kids. 2 months later, his plan is already in motion. He's rescued orphans from a horrific experimentation facility, and now praises his newly hired personal knight, Evan. Evan points out Alon's complete lack of expression. So Alon offers a smile so forced it's genuinely terrifying. He realizes this new body's facial muscles just won't cooperate. But Evan, a rare, loyal soul in this world, takes the compliment. The knight then brings up the raid's true target, a girl named Utia. He admits that even to his experienced eyes, the child was extraordinary. He recalls seeing her in the facility, chained among the other children. She possessed a power so immense he couldn't understand her captivity. Evan asks the obvious question, why leave such a powerful asset behind? Alon knows it might look like he's wasting her potential, but because he knows her future, a wielder of immense power who becomes the sin of wrath. If she grows up peacefully, however, that future can be avoided. The first landmine is officially disarmed. Now he just needs to come up with a good excuse for Evan. He explains that for Utia the time simply hasn't come yet, a cryptic answer that leaves his knight completely baffled. Alon orders him to keep the raid a secret and provide generous support from the shadows. He then hands over a letter, meant for Utia herself. Touched by his master's thoughtfulness, Evan promises to deliver it safely. As his loyal knight rides off to complete the mission, Alon can only hope his small gesture will make a difference. He remembers a specific incantation from the game, a holy spell meant to pacify the sin of wrath. The words speak of anguish, emptiness, and hope. But in the game, the spell was always too late. To stop her from fully embracing her rage, its failure would always trigger a devastating boss fight. Back in the present, Alon stretches. Feeling accomplished, he muses on the strange logic of the game's world, where a single phrase can supposedly appease a fanatic. Meanwhile, in a desolate alley, Utia receives the letter. Evan notes the immense power still radiating from her. But he also sees a strange, emotionless child. She confirms the sender's name is Alon, and then demands to know why he left her behind. A wave of pure magical pressure slams into Evan. He realizes she's visualizing her power, a master-level feat. And suddenly, his master's cryptic words click into place. He repeats the phrase to her, "The time hasn't come." The letter contains the holy incantation, a promise she recognizes, a revelation that leaves the poor knight utterly speechless, a promise that transforms a lost child into something terrifyingly powerful. Meanwhile, Alon is back in his room, feeling good about his day's work. He drifts off to sleep, determined to tackle the next problem. But the next day, he's already hit a frustrating dead end. He can't find any information on the third boss when Evan arrives. The knight reports another child has been rescued as instructed. Evan recalls a strange figure who appeared during the chaos of the rescue. Just then, a loud voice calls out his name. It's his older brother, Tonio, who clearly has no concept of personal space. He grabs Alon's face, demanding a response from his illiterate brother. Evan quickly bows, telling Tonio he'll take his leave. But Tonio pins him to the ground with his foot, pleased that the knight knows his place. Suddenly, a dagger flies past his head and embeds itself deep into the wall. The source of the interruption is the eldest son, Palatio Leo. He holds a blade to Tonio's throat, disgusted by his brother's vices. Alon recalls that in the game, the Palladio family were just minor characters, part of an early quest to investigate their corrupt dealings and criminal organization. The two older brothers were locked in a fierce battle for succession, with Tonio becoming an underworld boss known for his illicit enterprises. Alon remembers their constant violent struggle for power. Tonio, the future drug lord of a massive cartel, a conflict Alon wants absolutely no part of. As the brothers' chaotic energy finally leaves the room, Alon makes a new vow: to live as a weak, useless son. Evan watches him collapse, noting the second son is no ordinary man. He silently observes his young master, utterly spent. How could this boy uncover secret labs and slave markets? He looks like he can barely tie his own shoes, let alone run a spy network. Evan can only conclude that his master is truly peculiar. Evan questions Alon's decision to send the rescued child away, but Alon knows this child is more than just special. He's a world-ending threat. He was rescued from the slave markets of the Kalian kingdom. His name is Deus Macalian, the second boss from Psychedelia, a boy who endured endless suffering after being sold into slavery, and would grow up to become the terrifying sin of sloth. His part of the game was infamous for its sheer cruelty. Alon shudders, remembering just how brutal the descriptions were. He gives Evan the same cryptic excuse: the time hasn't come. Evan then asks about the letters Alon has been sending to Utia. Alon explains he's asked Utia to take care of the rescued boy. We see that same boy, Deus, standing alone in the darkness. A mysterious figure approaches him from the shadows and tells him that he's been utterly broken. She notes the marks left on him by some terrible force and identifies it as the work of the Black Goat. She congratulates him, saying he's been chosen by the Great Moon. She then unleashes a torrent of energy, telling him to embrace his new power. In exchange, she asks for his absolute loyalty to a certain person. And just like that, the boy is whisked away by this strange power.
She decides that along with a simple greeting,
She'll send Alon his very first reply. Back in his study, Alon is having a complete meltdown. Evan bursts in, shocked by the news about the second son. Alon freezes, a bead of sweat running down his face, because his brother Tonio has already met an untimely end. We cut to a grand funeral hall, where Tonio lies in an open casket. Their father, the head of the family, seems entirely unbothered. Alon watches in disgust as his father complains of boredom at his own son's funeral. He can't believe Tonio died from an accidental fall this early, a major deviation from the game's plot. Alon recalls his eldest brother Leo, gloating over Tonio's body. His father had put on a show of grief for his fallen son, but Alon could see the triumphant glee in his eyes. With the succession settled, Leo quickly absorbed Tonio's criminal empire. Sometime later, Alon sits with Evan in his study. He's become pen pals with Utia, the future Sin of Wrath, hoping that consistent contact will keep her on a better path. Evan notes that their small orphanage is gaining new sponsors. He then brings up the search Alon had tasked him with, announcing that the Information Guild has finally found a clue. Alon perks up at the news, hoping it's a lead on the third boss. For a moment, the evening feels calm and peaceful. But elsewhere, that peace is violently shattered. At a drug distribution site, Leo's men praise their new leader's generosity. Their criminal organization is expanding rapidly, with plans for even greater influence. Suddenly, one of the men loses control of his own body. Forced by an unseen power to draw his own sword, he can only watch in horror as his hand turns the blade on himself. His body falls to the ground, another victim in a brutal display. Watching from the shadows is a hooded figure, manipulating his puppets with glowing strings. The puppet master Deus questions the meaning behind this slaughter. Udia asks why he sympathizes with these criminals. She explains this is all to build a foundation, a worthy home for the one who saved them. With their purpose clear, she unleashes a devastating wave of energy. Everything they do is according to their master's will. The entire criminal operation is wiped from existence in a single blast. They are the Blue Moon, the sword of their unseen master, leaving behind a massive crater in the shape of a crescent moon. 2 years have passed since Alon first became pen pals with Utia. Alon rushes through the mansion, desperately searching for someone. He finds Evan collapsed in the garden, having just returned from a mission. The knight reports that the fifth and final child has been safely delivered. Alon is overcome with relief at the news. He quickly offers his exhausted knight some food. It's been a long and difficult road finding all the future sins. Alon tells his loyal knight that he can finally rest. With their mission complete, a sense of relief washes over Alon. But Evan once again notes his master's complete lack of expression. Alon insists he's smiling, though it's the most deadpan grin imaginable. Alon stretches, basking in the glow of his success. He relaxes in the grass, amazed at how smoothly his plan has gone. He recalls the terrible suffering each of the children endured, the very tragedies that would have forged them into the 5 great sins. He knew the chances of saving them all before they were broken were slim, but now they stand together before their new home. Evan arrives with a letter and an update on the orphanage. He reports that the children, who were once like broken dolls, have become incredibly cheerful and full of life. Alon seems pleased, noting they won't need to hire a childcare teacher. Alon is surprised Utia is taking such good care of the others. He concludes that deep down, Utia is a good kid after all. The letter confirms all the children are healthy and thriving, and that the 5 future sins are growing up as normal kids. Evan then asks the million-dollar question, when will he finally meet them? But Alon admits he has no intention of ever meeting them. He remembers the horrific process that turned them into monsters, and the terrible childhoods that forged their personalities. He quickly backpedals, suggesting maybe in 5 years' time. For now, he'll focus on getting strong enough to survive this lovely world. He muses that this body's magical talent is a huge asset when Evan asks about a group called the Blue Moon. Alon has never heard of them, so Evan explains they're a new organization that hunts down criminals. He dismisses them as a minor detail, a temporary fad that will likely fade away. But Evan adds a chilling detail. This group also targets and kills nobles. This sends Alon into a full-blown panic, demanding Evan become his 24/7 bodyguard. That night, in a different part of the world, Utia asks for a report on the Northern Territories. A girl with cat ears proudly reports that she's dealt with the problem by taking out every last slave trader in the region. This is Seolang, the sin of pride. She brags that no one even came close to discovering her identity. Next, a girl named Rhine, the sin of greed, reports she's disposed of all the evidence. She declares that the southern region is now completely under their control. A white-haired boy then speaks up about the illegal experimentation facility and how he dealt with the guards there. This is Radan, the sin of mysophobia. Udia smiles, pleased that everything is proceeding according to their master's will, for they exist only for the Great Moon, their secret organization's namesake. But she admits there is one single problem. How can anything be wrong when they are perfectly executing his plan? Another boy presents a document, revealing a dangerous directive he found. It seems the Count's eldest son is targeting the very person they serve. Rodden agrees, his resolve hardening in a flash of red energy. The other members of the Blue Moon look on, sensing a shift. Utia's eyes burn with fury as she confirms their new mission. 2 years later, Alon attends another family funeral. This time, it's for his father, Count Palladio. The official cause is a heart attack, but Alon knows better. He overhears his brother's men discussing another raid by the Blue Moon. It seems the mysterious group has become a major concern for everyone, and so the funeral ends with not a single genuine tear shed. But as Alon leaves, he feels the cold, calculating gaze of his brother Leo. Evan asks his master what he plans to do now. With Leo set to become the family head, he finds Alon packing. Alon tells him to pack as well, announcing they're leaving. He clarifies they're not abandoning the territory, just heading south. A destination Evan recognizes as the village of Roadmill. Alon confirms his plan to leave for the small southern town. As their carriage waits below, a figure watches from a balcony. It's his brother Leo, looking down with a triumphant smirk. Elsewhere, a simple breakfast of toast and eggs is being made, and Alon himself is the one doing the cooking. He's even learned to cook for himself, a simple, peaceful life. But that peace is shattered when he's dragged back for the eldest son's funeral. Alon can't believe he's back in this wretched place, watching the plot derail once more. He looks down at his brother, Leo, who was apparently killed by a sword to the heart. The question hangs in the air. Who on earth was powerful enough to kill Leo? He grabs a nearby attendant, demanding to know what happened. But the man panics, terrified of even making eye contact with him. Alon is completely baffled by the extreme reaction. As the other guests whisper and stare, Evan finally makes his way through the crowd. Alon asks if he's found anything, but his knight seems hesitant to speak. Evan whispers a shocking question, asking if Alon was the mastermind behind Leo's downfall. Alon turns away as the other guests begin to whisper and stare. The story flashes back to the day Alon first left for Roadmill. Evan had questioned his choice, suggesting a city would be a better destination. But Alon knew that the quiet village was essential to his grand plan. He had already saved the 5 children from their terrible fates, and successfully prevented the world's destruction. All he wanted now was for them to live normal, peaceful lives. Roadmill was perfect. a place completely disconnected from the game's story. It was the ideal spot to finally relax and enjoy his new lazy life. Evan calls out his master's habit of brushing things off when they're inconvenient. Alon can only sweat, realizing his night is far too perceptive. The story returns to the day they left the estate. When Leo watched from a balcony, debating his brother's fate, he'd always planned to dispose of his useless younger brother. But since Alon was exiling himself, there was no longer a need. Still, Leo couldn't shake the feeling that his recent misfortunes were connected to Alon. His fingers drummed against the stone railing in frustration. He turns to a subordinate with a new command. Follow the carriage. The henchman, Alman, asks if this is an order to kill him. But Leo's order is met with an uncharacteristic silence. He's confused. Alman was known for his blind obedience. Yet for the first time, the loyal henchman is questioning his master. Leo snaps, telling him to just follow the command. But before he can finish, a blade pierces through his chest. He looks down in disbelief to see his own man has betrayed him. Alman explains that he's always enjoyed the game of war, and with a chilling smile, he admits the fun is now over. He follows a different creed now, one taught by the Blue Moon. And anyone who dares threaten their master will be eliminated. With a single brutal swing, Alman cuts down his former master. He'd been waiting 2 long years for this very command. Leo's final threat is cut short, as Alman declares Alon will now be free forever, and with that the assassin vanishes into the night. Sometime later, a new day dawns in a quiet town. Alon wakes up, feeling refreshed and content. He muses on the simple joys of his new life, waking and eating whenever he pleases. He's so proud of his cooking, he briefly considers opening a toast business, but his peaceful breakfast is interrupted by an urgent message from Evan. He takes the letter, his moment of bliss officially over. The news is so shocking, his 3-day trial of paradise has just expired, and just like that, he's dragged back to another family funeral. He notices the other guests are terrified of him. For some reason, Evan leans in with a wild accusation, asking when Alon became a criminal mastermind. The two of them sit in awkward silence, isolated from the rest of the mourners. Alon pleads with his knight to explain this insane theory. Evan lays it out. With Leo gone, Alon is the only one who benefits, making him the prime suspect. Alon is completely short-circuited by this insane accusation. Evan continues, noting that with Leo gone, all obstacles have conveniently vanished. He congratulates Alon for becoming the family's new mastermind, complete with a master assassin. Alon can only wonder where to even begin objecting to this madness. He argues that no group could eliminate Leo so easily, but Evan brings up the Blue Moon. The knight considers the possibility for a moment, but explains the Information Guild has already ruled them out. Leo was taken down by blades in a brutal up-close assault. Alon agrees, dismissing the Blue Moon as a minor variable not present in the original game. Meanwhile, Utia and the others discuss the aftermath of their mission. Ryan reports that they left no survivors. Seolang eagerly draws her blade, wanting to share her part. She boasts that the only thing she left behind was a mountain of bodies. Deus then reports on the remaining forces he faced, a total of 486 enemy combatants. And just as their leader commanded, Rodden confirms he eliminated every single one. Utia smiles, pleased with their perfect execution. In just 5 days, they've dismantled an entire criminal empire. But she tells Radon the cleanup isn't quite finished yet. Radon presents a new file, revealing more nobles connected to the criminal network. At the top of the list is the Altia Duke family, who are deeply involved. Udia takes the report, her expression turning cold. Her eyes glow with crimson light as she gives an unspoken command. The other members of the Blue Moon understand immediately. Seolang and Reen are practically buzzing with anticipation for their next mission. Radan simply promises to dispose of them quietly. Utia then asks Ryan for an update on the Information Guild. Reen confirms their cover is safe. The guild doesn't suspect the Blue Moon at all. Deus adds that the official story is a lone swordmaster went on a rampage. She clutches the file, her smile turning sinister. This mission, she explains, was not an official order. Deus looks up, his resolve hardening as she speaks. She reminds them that a sword should not think for itself. The Blue Moon only moves on command, for their master knows everything, and her final warning is simple. Never disappoint him. But Deus is confused, wondering why someone as powerful as Utia would ever feel nervous about simply being caught. He finally understands, clenching the papers in his hand. Because everything they do is for the Great Moon, their unseen master. Back in his study, Alon is completely overwhelmed. For a month, he's been buried in paperwork, his dream of a lazy life shattered. With his brother's death so far off script, he's now the sole heir, and all the family's backlogged affairs have fallen squarely on his shoulders. He wonders why the vassals are suddenly so diligent. until he realizes they're terrified of the mastermind he's rumored to be. He figures they're just trying to stay on his good side. Just then, Evan's voice calls out to him by a crackling fire. The knight looks exhausted, but he has something important to say. He's amazed by Alon's magical talent, which is apparently great for roasting potatoes. Evan explains that reaching the second circle of magic takes years of training, but Alon admits he only practiced out of sheer anxiety for his own safety, a level of mana control that should be impossible for a novice. But our boy seems completely unimpressed with his own genius. He's just excited to finally be using magic in a fantasy world. He figures he can take his time learning, since the world is safe now. There's just one tiny problem. His mana capacity is pathetically small. Evan explains that a person's mana pool is predetermined at birth, and his own is naturally quite large. But Alon's is so minuscule that no amount of training can ever fix it. But Evan has an idea, presenting a formal invitation to a ball. Alon looks up, completely unenthused by the prospect. The scene shifts to a grand hall, filled with the kingdom's elite. Alon stands stiffly in his formal attire, looking deeply uncomfortable. He's been here for 5 minutes and is already completely exhausted. But as the future count, he knows he needs to build connections. He steels his resolve, while Evan seems more focused on the dessert table. But as they step forward, the crowd of nobles parts before them. They practically jump out of his way, terrified by his presence. Alon watches them flee, his fearsome reputation clearly preceding him. A boy with an eye patch teases Alan about being upset, but our boy is completely unfazed. Evan tries to comfort him, but Alan simply says he expected this treatment. He knows the Palatio name has fallen far from its former glory, becoming known as the Degenerates of the East. But he came prepared, ready to unleash his secretly practiced social skills. He approaches a noblewoman, commenting on the unique taste of the wine. He takes a deep breath, noting its equally unique aroma. Then he offers what he thinks is a gentle smile, asking to take some home. The woman can only stare back in absolute, unfiltered terror. She faints on the spot, promising to prepare the wine as Alan looks on, confused. But his attempt at small talk is seen as a threat, cementing his new reputation. Alan can only assume the woman was just incredibly shy. The eye patch boy notes that the loot has increased again. As more terrified nobles send gifts, Alan's wine knowledge goes completely to waste. He realizes that with the rumors about his brothers, he's become the most avoided man in the entire kingdom. Defeated, he decides to step outside for some fresh air. But his departure is noticed by an elegant woman with crimson hair. Her gaze follows him with a sharp, calculating intensity. Alan finds a moment of peace on a quiet balcony, away from the crowd. He wonders where his simple, lazy life went so wrong. But a soft voice cuts through his thoughts, asking to speak with him. Alan turns, shocked that anyone is actually talking to him. He looks toward the source of the voice, his face a perfect picture of confusion. A young girl introduces herself as Loria, of the Altia Duke family. The name clicks instantly and Alan offers a wary hello. He remembers the Altia family as one of the game's 3 masterminds. Of course, the one person to approach him would be from a family of villains. But as he searches his memory, he realizes he doesn't recognize this child at all. He's certain she was never in the game. As she cuts right to the chase, asking for his help, she reveals a shocking truth. That she is going to be assassinated, a desperate plea from a girl who believes her life is over. She explains that as the daughter of a mistress, her older sisters now plan to kill her, and suddenly it all makes sense to Alan. She believes that with his rumored power, he can save her. But Alan immediately declines, though she insists she has something to offer. She offers him a fortune, but Alan cuts her off, saying he's leaving. He knows he can barely handle his own problems, let alone hers. So he walks away, leaving the desperate girl behind. Loria can only watch him go, her last hope fading. But as he walks, a wave of guilt washes over him. He offers a simple platitude, wishing her well, and with that, he leaves the ball, his mission a total failure. But his departure is watched by a familiar crimson-haired woman. She notes that an Altia approached their master, the Great Moon. But this girl is not a threat, and therefore not on their list. The 2 figures agree to follow their new orders to dispose of the remaining Altias. They continue to watch the party from a high balcony, hidden in plain sight. Their top priority is to keep their master from learning about this incident, all while Alan stands below, completely unaware he's being observed. But as he walks, the crimson-haired woman from before approaches him directly. Alan is internally ecstatic, hoping this is his chance to finally network. But his suspicion immediately returns. Is this another mastermind? He figures anyone brave enough to approach him can't be an ordinary noble. He greets her by name, Lady Zenonia, which seems to surprise her. Alan simply replies that she's famous for a number of reasons. He recalls the three great masterminds of the Asteria kingdom, the Altia family of the north, and his own Palatio family of the east, and finally the Zenonia family, the degenerates of the west. The woman introduces herself as Callia, the eldest daughter of Count Zenonia. He remembers her family as little more than sophisticated corporate thugs. Alon panics, realizing he needs peaceful connections, not dangerous ones. He decides to play it safe, simply complimenting her on her beauty. She accepts the flattery and suggests they speak more privately. But Alon knows they're being watched and just wants to leave peacefully. She simply smiles, noting that he's just as the rumors say. She hopes to see him again, leaving Alon utterly baffled. And with that cryptic farewell, she turns and walks away. He's left wondering what that was all about and if he's collecting weirdos now. Meanwhile, the Blue Moon observers note a new complication. It seems their master is being followed by a mysterious figure. With no orders to intervene, they decide to simply observe for now. Sometime later, Evan questions his master's certainty. He wonders if this strange canyon is really their destination. But Alon knows they've finally found his true objective. He confirms this is the real location, unlike his previous failed attempts. He reveals the real reason for this trip was a hidden labyrinth in the south, a dungeon with a very specific layout he knows by heart. By solving riddles in 8 different rooms, he can claim a powerful artifact, and luckily, he has the entire walkthrough memorized. He and Evan step into the ancient, glowing entrance. Alon is stunned. Seeing it in person is a completely different experience. He notes how perfectly crafted the entire canyon feels. When Evan asks how he knows this place, Alon gives a vague, unhelpful answer. He snaps out of it, telling Evan he's joking with the most serious face imaginable. And their welcome party is a monstrous creature bursting from the ground. Alon explains that a wrong answer means a merciless attack. The monster is dispatched in a brutal, messy fashion. Evan marvels at his master's unchanging, deadpan expression. He reflects on 4 years of seemingly random, unconnected missions. He asks how Alon knows this place as a stone door rumbles open. But he follows him anyway, because his master's deeds are always good. Still, he can't help but wonder what Alon is truly after this time. Alon looks sick, admitting the reality of the dungeon is far more brutal than he expected. The door finally opens to reveal a room overflowing with treasure. But Alon ignores it all, focused only on a simple black ring. Evan questions the choice, noting the ring looks completely useless. But Alon holds it up, satisfied that he's finally found the restriction. He assures his knight that the way back is perfectly safe. As Alon celebrates his easy clear, Evan senses something is terribly wrong. Because outside, the canyon's rock piles awaken as an army of stone golems. Evan draws his blade, realizing they're trapped by an unknown enemy. But Alon steps forward, calmly declaring that he'll handle this. Evan screams a warning as a massive golem prepares to strike. He knows his master's second circle magic isn't nearly enough. But Alon simply holds up the ring, invoking its power with a single command. A blinding light erupts from the ring, engulfing Alon completely. He finds himself in a cosmic void, where a voice demands he state his 2 restrictions. He's stunned. What was a simple menu in the game is now a divine interrogation. This is the true power of the labyrinth's reward, the artifact known as restriction. It's a tool that grants power by imposing a price on its user. Alon steels himself, ready to make his first binding vow. He will always use complex hand seals when casting magic. The voice then asks what he wishes to gain from this self-imposed rule. He asks for the power to bend the very laws of the world, a request that is granted. Alon stands in the quiet aftermath, feeling the shift in his own potential. The voice demands he state his second restriction. Alon makes his second vow, to always use specific incantations for his magic. Once again, the entity asks what he wishes to gain in return. And once again, he asks for the power to bend the laws of the world. The divine being seems to consider his bold request. Alon suddenly worries he messed up the hand signs, which would be awkward. But he knows from the game that these restrictions maximize magical power. He's betting his entire future on his obsessive gaming knowledge. The cosmic voice accepts his vow, calling him one who remembers a forgotten god. It thanks him for carrying on this ancient will, leaving Alon utterly confused. The ring dissolves into his hand, its power now a part of him. The voice promises to watch over him, the one who carries the will. Back in reality, Evan screams that his master's magic is far too weak to stop the massive golem, but Alon remains completely unfazed by the danger. He knows his pathetically small mana pool can only produce a feeble sphere of lightning. No matter how much he trains, this is his absolute limit. But now it's time to test the power of his new restriction. And with that thought, the tiny spark of magic begins to grow. The lightning surges around him, growing in intensity. It condenses into a blinding sphere of raw power. Alon stands at the center of a brilliant, heavenly light. He unleashes a spell called Blue Light. Weaving intricate hand signs for diffraction linear, he focuses the torrent of energy between his hands and unleashes it in a single devastating beam. Evan can only watch in absolute jaw-dropping disbelief. The blast of pure energy tears through the canyon and completely obliterates the massive stone golem. The beam of light tears through the remaining stone guardians. In the aftermath, the canyon is silent and scarred with glowing runes. Evan can only stare, calling the display utterly insane. He wonders if Alon was hiding his true strength all along. He's never seen anything like it, questioning if it was truly second circle magic. But Alon's expression remains as blank and unreadable as ever. He admits he didn't know either. The game's version was apparently a cheap knockoff. He recalls the turn-based combat of Psychedelia, where buffs were simple. He had enhanced his chain lightning with 4 incantations and hand seals, charging the spell over a total of 5 turns, a large-scale lightning spell that took 5 turns to set up. And on top of that, the Forgotten God gave him a double power boost. Even Alon admits the results were a little overkill, but apparently, the escape was even harder than the actual battle. He looks back at the canyon, wondering who built such a place, and then he remembers the labyrinth's other name. In the game, players called it Palion's Labyrinth, a fact he casually drops on Evan, claiming the creator was his friend. After 3 long weeks, he helps his exhausted knight begin the journey home. Evan can only marvel at his master's sudden burst of diligence. Alon reflects on the game's simple logic, where buffs were just a simple stat increase, but in this world, each incantation visibly transformed the magic. He wonders if his mana control is just that good despite his tiny reserves. He decides to experiment later, happy that his plan was a success. But as they rest, a hooded figure watches from the darkness. Her gaze is fixed on their camp, her purpose unknown. She leaps from her perch with silent grace and lands without a sound. She stands before the glowing runes, recognizing the ancient language. She recalls the words written in the ancient runes, a story of a coward named Palion who built this place for a friend. She reaches out, feeling the echoes of the past. She knows the legend of the great Emperor Palion who defeated the dragons, a history she only knows because she inherited the ancient library. And now Alon claims this legendary emperor was his friend. She also knows that the infamous Bloody Queen is following him, and that the Great Moon was another of Palion's respected friends. But the incantations Alon used are completely unknown to her, leaving her to wonder what he truly is. A boy who holds the secrets of a forgotten age. The hooded observer stands alone in the moonlit canyon. She reflects on her mission, ashamed she only followed orders. A second figure appears and she acknowledges their arrival. The newcomer asks if she found the information she was looking for. She confirms the target has been successfully eliminated. A flashback shows their victim being twisted by an unseen force. She states that she now needs to report for disposal, and with that, the 2 assassins disappear into the night. Elsewhere in the Zenonia family estate, Kalia confirms that the rumors she's heard are true. She recalls his disturbingly emotionless eyes like staring into an abyss, and she remembers the rumors that called him famous. She brings this up with her father, noting that Count Zenonia is indeed powerful. But she finds it strange that Alon, a known recluse, recognized her. She asks her father if he shares her suspicion, but the Count simply dismisses her concerns, attributing it to his own fame. A sinister smile spreads across Kalia's face. She conjures a sphere of dark, hypnotic energy and uses it to completely dominate her father's mind. With her father now a puppet, she is the true family head, wondering how Alon saw through her facade. Kalia notes that too many eyes are watching. Just then, a subordinate rushes towards her in a panic. He urges her to return to her room immediately, but his body begins to twist, a victim of some unseen force. In another room, a man confronts her, realizing she planted a magical imprint on him. Kalia simply smiles, asking how he managed to figure it out. She's impressed he found her weakness so soon after they met. Meanwhile, Alon deals with a very different problem, his knight using him as a pillow. A carriage makes its way to the grand estate of the Altia Duke family, and inside, Loria smiles, realizing Alon is no ordinary person. She recalls his cold eyes, a noble of the underworld. He was her last lifeline, but he simply walked away. She knew he'd never accept a deal with so much risk. Her siblings had already stripped her of everything she had. Now she was truly alone with nothing left to offer. She returns to the Altia estate, her hope completely gone. But as she enters, a maid calls out in a panic. The servant rushes to her with some terrible news, that 2 of her siblings have taken their own lives. Loria can't believe it. Ruthless killers don't just give up. Loria recalls the names of her other siblings, Timilian and Malian. as the servants cry out in terror. They too have met a gruesome end, taken by an unseen force. Loria can only stare, completely stunned by the carnage. Meanwhile, Radan leaps from a rooftop, his work finished. He offers a cold smile, reporting the disposal is complete. The Altia estate falls silent, its dark secrets purged. Loria stands frozen, trying to make sense of the chaos. And then she remembers Elon's final cryptic words to her. She realizes he was never weak, just hiding his claws. She now sees him as the Count family's true mastermind. And she finally understands what he meant. Just like him, she became the sole heir overnight. She stands alone in the now empty estate, wondering what kind of devil's bargain she's made. She knows what happens to those who betray him, and resolves to stay on the path she's chosen. 2 months pass in the blink of an eye. A man arrives claiming to be under orders from Duke Altia. Elon can only marvel at the expensive wine, a perk of his new reputation. He's told the wine is worth thousands in gold per bottle. But the card is signed by Loria Altia, leaving Elon confused. The messenger insists the Duke personally ordered its delivery, and a horrifying thought begins to dawn on Elon. That Loria, the youngest daughter, has become the new Duke Altia. We see her 2 months prior, taking over after her father's passing. Despite the sudden and convenient demise of all her siblings, she had a perfect alibi from the night of the ball. Her own secret organization had been dismantled by her siblings, leaving her with absolutely nothing left to lose. She wonders if he took advantage of her desperation, casually declining her plea, only to handle everything from the shadows. She tries to grasp just how many moves ahead he's playing. He must have helped her because he needs the Altia name for his own plans. Even her family's vast power is nothing compared to what he's hiding. He's an underworld boss who built an empire on business alone. And now he wants her family's prestige to manipulate the entire kingdom. Loria walks through the halls of her new empty home. For now, she'll focus on her duties, certain her benefactor will contact her soon. And she hopes he enjoyed her little thank you gift. The messenger finally takes his leave, but Elon is left completely bewildered by this turn of events. Several months pass, bringing them to a cold winter. 5 years before the game's story was meant to begin. Evan rushes to his side, asking if he should use his new title. Elon can only reflect on how his simple plan for a lazy life has been completely derailed, though the work-life balance is a nice perk. Evan then hands him the latest letter from Utia. He asks if there's any news on who took down his brother, Leo. Evan then asks a more pointed question about his master's true purpose. Elon realizes the changes from the game are butterfly effects he caused. Evan teases him for finally sounding like a proper count. Elon opens the letter, curious about this month's update. Utia writes that everyone is well, and Deus is now a master puppeteer. Seolang, the future sin of pride, is busy playing with friends, while Ryan reads and gardens and Radan has taken up landscaping. Elon smiles, feeling like a proud father watching them grow from afar. Evan then asks a simple question about the children's age. He explains they're old enough to leave the orphanage soon, but an image of the 5 happy children begins to crack and fade. The letter ends with a vision of the 5 children bowing in perfect unison. Elon realizes he needs to start thinking about their futures. Evan asks if he was keeping them isolated because they were unwell, but Elon is confident that with a good childhood, they can now live normal lives. He recalls the game's lore, remembering Utia's innate talent for faith. He remembers Deus's natural gift for the sword, and Ryan's incredible aptitude for research. He recalls Seolang's raw power as a warrior, and Radan's destiny as a powerful apostle. With their talents in mind, he hatches a perfect plan to find them all good jobs. He decides to send them each a personal gift to mark the occasion. As winter settles over the Palladio estate, Elon finally finishes his grand plan, much to Evan's emotional delight. The knight eagerly sets off to deliver the letters, hoping for a future reward. And with that, the children are sent out into the wider world. Utia receives her letter, noting that this time it's personal. The other 4 future sins also receive their own individual directives. Seolang is absolutely thrilled by the personal attention from their master, while Ryan and Utia consider the weight of his words. Each of them now holds a key to their own unique future. Deus holds his letter with a stoic expression, while Seolang celebrates hers with pure joy. Ryan and Radan also read their own letters, their expressions thoughtful. But Utia suggests they first review the old letters explaining their master's directives are on another level. The others are surprised, as only Utia had ever read them before. They gather to read, confused by the casual conversational tone. Utia explains that their master always disguised his orders this way. His very first letter, a friendly greeting, also contained targets for elimination. Another letter officially entrusted her with the blue moon, choosing them all for his cause. She explains that to prevent leaks, they must understand the true meaning behind his words. But Radon asks a simple question. Why not just use magic if security is the issue? Utia reminds them that they don't need to understand, only to follow. Radon can only marvel at her chillingly firm faith, finally understanding. Seolang, however, is just excited to read her new directive, and so, under the dim light of a single lantern, the 5 future sins gather to learn their new destinies. Deus is being sent to Caliburn, while Seolang is less than thrilled about the desert. Ryan is headed for the entertainment city, and Radan to the city of labyrinths. And Udia herself is being sent to the Holy Kingdom of Rosario. The letters clearly state what each of them is meant to do. Deus is confused why he's to become a knight, but Seolang is just happy their support will continue. Ryan adds that the letters also mention where to find their gifts. But before they part, Utia gives them one final critical order. Unless their master says otherwise, the name Blue Moon is forbidden. And with their new missions clear, the 5 children set off, each one heading down their own separate path into the world. 3 months later, Alan is buried under a mountain of books. He's trying to understand his new magic, but finds no answers. He asks Evan about Leo's case, but the guild still has no leads. Alan worries that his meddling has sent the butterfly effect spiraling out of control. After all, Loria Altia, a girl who should have died, is now a powerful duke. And to make matters worse, she's rapidly expanding her own underworld forces. He immediately tells Evan to call off the investigation into Leo's death. He knows the Information Guild is nearly omniscient in this world, and if he digs too deep into these new plot threads, he might just uncover a truth that will get him killed. He figures it's best not to poke the hornet's nest. Evan agrees, and the investigation is officially closed. But Evan, now sporting a new eye patch, has an update on Deus. The boy has not only been knighted, but has founded his own knight order. Alan is stunned, realizing Deus has already reached an expert level of skill. Alan can't believe Deus is already a sword expert, a prodigy who makes even his distant sponsor proud. 6 months fly by in a flash. A year after the children left, Evan arrives with fresh news. He announces that Deus is now a master knight, a revelation that completely short-circuits Alon. He thought master knights were simply sword masters. In the game, they were superhuman warriors of immense power. But Evan clarifies Deus isn't quite there yet. He earned the title by defeating the 4th sword in combat. Alon recalls that Caliburn has been at war for a decade, and Evan explains that becoming a swordmaster takes decades. The youngest ever, Reinhardt, only achieved it at age 32. Alon remembers him from the game, a prodigy from birth. Even with that talent, it took Reinhardt 20 years to master his craft. So how did Deus, a complete novice, do it in just one? Our boy wonders if he'll get any credit for this miracle. But his thoughts turn to a more pressing issue. Only Utia writes to him. Her letters always include updates on the other children. He's a little hurt that none of the others have ever thanked him. He tries to reset his mindset, reminding himself to be grateful. Because as long as the kids are happy, that's all that matters. Meanwhile, in the capital city of Kurdum, we find the grand mansion of the Eclipse Knight Order, a place where Caliburn's most elite warriors train. A lone figure stands silhouetted against a grand window. It's Deus Michaelian, now a captain and the youngest master knight. He looks down to see a young girl waiting for him below. She waves happily, calling out to her big brother, and for the first time, the stoic knight offers a gentle smile. Deus clears his throat, looking away with a slight blush. He admits that even a year later, he's embarrassed by that memory, a flashback to a time he lost everything to a shadowy power. All that remained was a single crystal, and an all-consuming, uncontrollable rage. He remembers sitting alone in a dark cell, utterly broken. The crystal was the only thing he had left of his past. He wasn't loyal just because the great moon saved him, but because the blue moon promised him a path to revenge. He threw himself into every mission with no regard for his own safety. For years, he carried out missions for the blue moon, until he received his first personal directive from their master. He remembers his confusion upon reading the strange letter. It spoke of a gift waiting for him at a small remote inn. Deus admits he was never one for presents, but he followed the order, arriving at the designated location, and what he found inside left him completely stunned. He ran towards a small girl, his composure finally breaking. Reaching out for the one person he thought he'd lost forever, it was his younger sister, alive and well. The family he thought was lost forever was now in his arms, a reunion that breaks his stoic facade. In a quiet inn, the two siblings hold each other tightly. He asks his sister, Celie, what happened after they were torn apart. She offers a gentle smile, wiping away his tears. They sit down together, ready to fill in the missing years. Celie begins to recount her story after being taken away. She was imprisoned in darkness, waiting for her turn. The moment came when she was to be sacrificed on a dark altar. But just as her life was about to end, a hand reached out and saved her. She explains that years later, she was about to be sold to a slave trader when a mysterious swordsman cut through the darkness to save her, a mercenary named Evan who had come to her rescue. After that, she received continuous support and medicine, all under the name of Alan Palatio, who promised her safety. She expresses her immense gratitude for this unseen benefactor. But Deus is left wondering how their master knew everything. He never spoke of his family, only that he was a victim of the Black Goat. He realizes their master, the Great Moon, truly knows everything. A realization that solidifies his unwavering loyalty. And just like that, all of Deus's doubts fit together like a puzzle. He finally understands Utia's anxiety and her warning about a sword thinking for itself. He now realizes that he was the foolish one all along. He remembers his master's promise that good things would come his way. Now he sees that even those words, spoken so long ago, were a hint that his master already knew his sister would survive. His sister's voice brings him back to the present moment. He gently pats her head, certain that even though the sword acted on its own, his all-knowing master must have generously overlooked it, and his loyalty, now stronger than ever, is completely absolute. For a boy who only knew revenge against the Black Goat, his family's survival was an incomparable gift. He remembers Utia's words from long ago, a promise that he would understand her devotion. His master's command was no longer just blind faith. It was a debt he was determined to repay. He would become a master knight, the pinnacle of Caliburn, and a subordinate's voice calls him back to the present. He walks past the rows of his elite guard, an order built to serve their true, unseen master, a gift he would repay with his sword. He looks forward to the day he can prove himself under the moon, and so, the Eclipse Knight Order marches into the frozen wastes. Meanwhile, Alon enjoys a rare moment of peace, which is immediately ruined by a sudden gust of wind. He scrambles to catch his notes, his lazy afternoon officially over. Back in his study, he tries to make sense of his own chaotic research. After the labyrinth, he'd focused entirely on studying incantations. He finally gets his notes in order, feeling a small sense of accomplishment. His research reveals how different incantations alter magic, like refraction, strengthening its area of effect. He's learned that refraction can expand a spell's range, while repulsion can disrupt incoming projectiles, and blue light is perfect for amplifying lightning magic. Diffraction Linear grants his spells piercing power, essentially guaranteeing a critical hit, but with his tiny mana pool allowing only one cast a day, and the incantations being forgotten lore with no explanations. It's taken him ages to piece it all together, a true testament to his gamer-level dedication. His research was born from a simple need for self-defense, and now, after 2 months, it's time to see the results. He begins with a complex hand seal, drawing raw lightning from the sky above. His first incantation, Collapse, is meant to destabilize the mana, forming a volatile sphere of electrical energy. He then adds Compression, focusing the power into a single point. With a final gesture, he prepares to unleash the spell. A brilliant pillar of blue light erupts into the sky, a display far more powerful than he ever expected. He realizes the order of the incantations is absolutely crucial. His first attempt failed because he used Collapse too early in the sequence. He can't believe the result of his own experiment. But his little magic show has attracted some unwanted attention. Kalia and her father are stunned, mentioning a term Alon doesn't know: origin. Alon is just wondering why the one person he wanted to avoid is here. The Count explains that this is the magic of a legendary 7th Circle mage, a concept completely foreign to Alon, who just wanted a self-defense spell. The Count points, asking if Alon is the one responsible for this display. He compares Alon's talent to a king recognizing a prodigy for his own. Soon after, they're all seated in the Palladio reception room. Kalia gets straight to the point, stating she has 2 reasons for being here. Her first goal is to confirm Alon's intentions, and to gauge the power that has taken over the Palladio family. She also wants to know more about the organization protecting him. Back in the present, she notes her father is trembling in fear. This is Biankel, a 5th Circle mage exiled for his dark experiments. A man who was always arrogant, now reduced to a quivering mess. He can only wonder if what he saw was truly origin magic, a question that leaves even the calculating Kalia deeply concerned. Just then, Alon enters the room, interrupting their thoughts. He asks what business brings the Zenonia family to his home. Kalia offers a polite apology for their sudden and unannounced visit. Alon accepts, saying he won't blame her for wanting to see the new Count. But he wants to make one thing perfectly clear. What he used was not origin magic. He claims that if he had to rank it, it would barely be 2nd Circle. He explains it's a useless spell, with no practical application for combat. A statement that carries a very clear, unspoken warning. Forget what you saw. The once arrogant mage quickly agrees, his formal tone shocking even his own daughter. Alon sighs in relief, then asks what business actually brought them here. Kalia claims she was simply in the area and decided to pay him a visit. But Alon cuts the conversation short, saying he's far too busy to entertain them. Kalia accepts her dismissal, thanking him for his time. But Alon offers one last piece of unsolicited advice. He suggests she visit Duke Altia, claiming the two would get along splendidly. A comment that clearly strikes a nerve with the crimson-haired mastermind. She forces a smile and agrees, promising to pay the Duke a visit. And with that, the Zenonia carriage finally departs from the estate. Evan asks why they were here, but Alon simply feigns ignorance. Internally, however, he knows this has just become a massive headache. If rumors of his origin magic spread, every wannabe hero will be at his door. He explains to Evan that the two families are rivals, making his suggestion an obvious power play. Alon just wants to be left alone, his patience clearly wearing thin. As the Zenonia carriage departs, the question of Alon's magic hangs in the air. Kalia asks her father if what they witnessed was truly origin magic. The mage denies it, but Kalia presses him about his earlier terror. He explains that origin magic creates new laws, a power reserved for the supreme. But what he saw through his observation lens was something else entirely. He describes a figure cloaked in an aura of absolute terrifying power, a being who could fix lightning in place, and twist the very laws of nature to his will, and somehow the spell still worked, defying all logic. A feat of magic so impossible, it could only be called a miracle. And behind that miracle, the mage saw something else. A terrifying, godlike presence watching over Alon. The thought alone is so dangerous, he forces himself to stop. After a lifetime spent studying forgotten magic, he comes to one simple, terrifying conclusion. Never oppose Count Palatio. Kalia realizes it's pointless to even try and guess his true intentions. His suggestion to visit Duke Altia was just another move on a much larger board, and she understands that she has already become one of his pawns. 5 months later, 2 years have passed since the children became independent. Evan enters the study, ready to deliver his report. Alon asks for an update, hoping for news on the children, but Evan reveals the Zenonia and Altia families have formed an alliance, a revelation that sends Alon reeling. It's a secret agreement, a pact made in the shadows of the underworld. Alon panics, wondering if his plan to save the world just created a new supervillain team-up, and then a horrifying thought dawns on him, that they took his sarcastic suggestion to heart. He tries to rationalize it away, certain it's just a temporary arrangement, but the weight of his accidental meddling is too much to ignore. So he begins to draft a very careful, very awkward apology letter. He hands the awkward apology letter to Evan for delivery, but his thoughts quickly turn to a more pressing concern. The complete radio silence from Radan and Seolang. He recalls the gift he sent her, a key to a brighter future, a powerful artifact meant to guide her away from her dark destiny. A cheat code he remembers clearly from the game's item description. He'd even given her a map to some hidden treasures to get her started. Her destination was the harsh desert nation, a land ruled by strength, a desolate place where only the strong can hope to survive. And in that very desert, a tired Seolang finally takes her first step. She stretches triumphantly, celebrating the end of her trials. She holds up a golden gauntlet, thanking the great moon for his gift. She had thought the essence of the Golden Mane tribe was just a legend. But the stories she heard in her childhood were no mere fairy tales. A flashback reveals the history of her people, the Lion tribe. They are the descendants of the Golden Mane, king of all beast folk, and the essence is a legendary item, granting immense power and authority, an item she found thanks to the map from her master. She endured the grueling trials of its inner world, and now wields a power she once thought was only a myth. She knows that what's clear is the Great Moon saved her, and gave her the power to avenge her parents against the Black Dragon, a debt she is now determined to repay. A surge of golden energy erupts from her body. She realizes her master's true intention was never for her to be an ordinary gladiator. Now she understands what she must truly do. She will become the strongest and revive the scattered Golden Mane tribe. And with a single punch, she unleashes her newfound power. She stands alone in the vast, desolate desert, because everything she does is for the one who saved her. And with a confident smile, she declares, it's time to begin. For under the light of the blue moon, the Golden Mane tribe will rise again. Back in his study, Alon recalls a recent conversation. Evan reports that the Information Guild has picked up rumors about the children. It seems Seolang has earned the nickname Golden Flash, a name that rings a faint bell for Aloni. Evan explains that in her new home, strength is all that matters. Alon then asks about Radan, but the information is still unconfirmed. He suddenly stares at his knight, asking if he's busy. He tells Evan to get ready for a month-long trip to the Magic Tower, much to the knight's surprise. Alon clarifies their destination is the Blue Tower, near the city of Labyrinths. Evan nods, agreeing to prepare for their long journey. But Alon is already dreading the month-long trip, a necessary evil to fix his tiny mana reserves. He thinks back to the Labyrinth City, a place he spent countless hours grinding. It was one of the game's main leveling maps, an endless dungeon. A place so vast, even the developers admitted it was just to troll players. But the endless dungeon also produced endless treasures, making appraisers invaluable. He recalls that Rhine is set to become one of these appraisers soon. He worries the simple appraisal tool he sent her might not be enough, but he figures he can always send more support later. A city of explorers ruled by no one but ambition. In a quiet corner of the city, past countless other storefronts, lies a secretive appraisal shop called Merd. Its unique services have attracted powerful clients, including the Lord of Lartania himself. The masked appraiser presents a device that generates flame from mana. The Lord is amazed to see a relic that can be engraved with new effects. He's even more impressed by its efficiency, lasting an hour on a tiny bit of mana. As another satisfied customer leaves, you have to wonder about that shop name. The appraiser sighs, finally alone after a long day. She removes her mask, revealing the face of Rhine, the future sin of greed. She stands in her workshop, her mind already on the next project. She presents another item, explaining it can also be engraved. As she closes up shop for the night, she thinks of the gifts from her master, the Great Moon. She recalls his order to become an appraiser, a command she didn't understand at first. She knew their master was connected to ancient legends, and that their purpose was to deal with a dark threat. But his directive to become a simple appraiser in Lartania seemed completely disconnected from their true mission. She remembers finding the gift he'd left for her, an artifact meant to help identify items below a certain threshold. But as the chains broke, she realized this was no ordinary tool. Its true nature was unknown even to the ancient library. It was an artifact known as the Eye of the Abyss, a legendary item that could be awakened by feeding it other relics. She knew that to fight the darkness, this power had to be unleashed, and so she began the long process of offering it worthy items. Using her appraisal tools to find the perfect sacrifices, she was already more than halfway to her goal. The eye would absorb a relic's essence, fundamentally changing its own nature. This was her true mission, to find and appraise high-level items to feed the eye, a task only she could accomplish thanks to her unique gift of the Eternal Library. All of this for one single purpose, to destroy the Black Wolf. All for the one who saved them, all according to the Great Moon's will. 3 weeks later, Alon and Evan arrive at the legendary Blue Tower, but they're greeted by the Vice Master, Fenia, who has zero time for visitors. She tells them to make it quick, her patience already worn thin. But Alon recognizes her, a future genius who will one day lead this very tower, an institution with power and influence rivaling even the highest nobility. Knowing this, he steels himself and introduces himself as Count Palladio. He explains he's here about the Time Gate, which barely gets her attention, until he makes a claim so bold it stops her in her tracks. He can destroy it. A dangerous rift in reality that unleashes untold horrors upon the world. Fenia scans him, questioning what he can do with such meager talent. She dismisses him entirely, leaving Alon completely flustered. She mocks his claim, sarcastically agreeing to his impossible request. Her anger flares as she explains he's not the first to make such a bold claim. Alon insists he can prove it, internally grumbling about her attitude. She accuses him of being a new count trying to pull a cheap publicity stunt. A wave of immense power erupts from her as she warns him to behave. Alon stumbles back, realizing the rumors about him aren't entirely wrong. Her eyes glow with power, her patience clearly at its end. Alon can only sweat, knowing he'd be flattened if he stepped out of line. But Alon is desperate, offering his entire fortune if he fails. He's so serious, he's even willing to swear a magical oath. Fenia considers his offer, her expression still cold and skeptical. She leads him to the Time Gate, reminding him of the high stakes. She admits she was curious if he was a true mastermind, or just a lucky fool who stumbled into power. She scoffs at his pathetic mana, wondering what he could possibly do. After all, these gates usually just spit out a relic and disappear. But this particular Time Gate has been a problem for over 2 years. She tells him to leave if he's just here to waste her time. Fenia notes his use of hands instead of a staff, a primitive technique she tries to dismiss. But a terrifying presence suddenly fills the chamber. A massive, blood-red eye opens in the darkness above them. Fenia is frozen by the sheer evil radiating from the gate. The two of them are just specks before this overwhelming power. She realizes she can't move. That time itself has stopped. Her analytical mind races, trying to comprehend the magic at play. She stares up at the eye, a symbol of pure malevolence. Her mind deciphers the impossible phenomenon, realizing what this thing truly is. Her mind is flooded with forbidden knowledge, a warning not to comprehend this being. The massive red eye glares down, a symbol of pure cosmic dread. A hand of pure malevolent energy begins to form from the darkness. It reaches down for Fenya, who is still completely frozen in place. But Alan steps forward, demanding absolute silence from the entity. Fenya's analytical mind finally processes the demand, and she understands. The terrifying red eye slowly begins to close, its presence fading. A single tear escapes her eye, a mixture of terror and profound relief. The chaotic red energy recedes, replaced by a calm celestial blue. And just like that, the time gate that plagued them for years was closed. Alan explains it was all child's play with the right item, which he'll be taking as his reward. He admits he had to make it look like a fancy spell and wonders if the Vice Master actually fell for his act. But Fenya is a terrified mess, promising to keep her mouth shut, leaving Alon to wonder if his bluff completely failed. He tries to tell her it's fine, but she rushes forward, promising with every fiber of her being to keep his secret. She insists she's incredibly tight-lipped, really. Our boy can only stare, completely baffled by her sudden change in attitude. Deciding not to question it, he tells Evan it's time to go. But the Vice Master calls out, asking him to wait a moment. She presents him with a case of mana potions. She made herself a gift for his troubles. Alan examines the top-grade potion, a rare gift from the tower's own Vice Master. Alan notes the insane value of the gift, worth a small fortune. He wonders why she's being so generous, while she panics internally. He offers to swear a mana oath to keep her quiet, which only makes her panic more. Alan tries to explain that she's got it all wrong. But it's too late. A magical contract forms between them. Chains of light bind them to a solemn vow. She proudly declares her loyalty, leaving Alan to accept his fate. And so, the Blue Tower swore an oath of secrecy, and Alan walked away with his prize and a few very expensive party favors. Evan examines the relic, questioning if this simple bracelet was worth all the trouble. But he tells Evan that whatever it is, it's something he absolutely needs. He holds up the Mark of the Unjust, an artifact that absorbs and stores mana. It works like a charm, easily surpassing his own pathetic mana reserves. He can only sigh, wondering what kind of body has less power than a support item. But he reminds himself his goal is self-protection, not frontline combat. For that purpose, this new power source is more than enough. Still, he can't help but wonder what Fenya could have possibly misunderstood. Her sudden, extreme politeness as they left was more than a little suspicious. She'd even agreed with him when he called himself a second circle mage, a little too enthusiastically. He realizes her reaction was almost identical to Callia's. He recalls leaving the Zenonia family behind, still reeling from the display of his power. And he remembers the Vice Master's equally terrified reaction. But he figures he'll never see them again, so who really cares? And so, he and Evan set off on another peaceful journey. Their destination, the grand estate of the Altia Duke family.
Inside, Loria Altia greets her guest, Lady Zenonia.
Callia returns the pleasantries, admiring the Altia family's power. She notes that their new alliance is all thanks to Count Palladio's keen judgment, a direct result of his offhand suggestion to visit the Duke. Callia explains that by heeding his words, the true meaning became clear. She recalls her conversation with Loria on that fateful night, a discussion that left the young Duke completely stunned. Callia had laid out the new power dynamic of the kingdom. With Alan as the absolute authority in the east, the Zenonia and Altia families could finally form a stable alliance. Back in the present, Loria asks about the purpose of this sudden visit. Callia reveals that Alan has sent a letter, piquing Loria's curiosity. It's a formal apology, explaining his poor reputation among the other nobles. It looks like a simple letter, but Callia knows there's a hidden message. Loria is certain there's a hidden directive within its pages. Callia agrees, suggesting they decipher its true meaning together. They recall how Elan spoke with key figures from both major factions. If neither the aristocrats nor the royalists suit his tastes, then the only logical conclusion is the most terrifying one. He plans to wipe the slate clean and build a new regime from the ashes. Loria realizes that with the powerful Zenonia family now on his side, Callia confirms that this is exactly what their master intends. And so, the two begin to discuss their part in his grand design. Meanwhile, at the Blue Tower, news of Elan's recent feat has begun to spread. The Tower Master demands a full report on what happened. Fenya can only sweat knowing she's bound by her oath. Back with Elan, he's having a much less stressful time until he chokes on a potato. Evan rushes to his side as Alon blames his near-death experience on the snack. He recovers quickly, still praising the deliciousness of his roasted treat. But the long journey has clearly taken its toll, and he just wants to go home. He muses that it's about time for Utia's letter to arrive, and far away, in the holy kingdom of Rosario, the bells begin to toll. A woman with silver hair and crimson eyes offers a knowing smile. It's Utia, now a holy sister and looking more dangerous than ever. Back at the Blue Tower, the Tower Master boasts about awakening a rare magical eye, only for Fenia to casually mention she was born with hers. A voice announces the Tower Master's return to the Grand Institution. Salame Micardo, an 8th Circle mage, enters his office and immediately senses the time gate is gone. He finds his Vice Master, Fenia, looking utterly defeated. She greets him with a shocking level of politeness and reports her work is done. Her calm demeanor is so unusual, he wonders if the world has turned upside down. He recalls that Fenia's immense talent also came with an equally immense ego. A flashback confirms her reputation for being incredibly arrogant and condescending. He had always believed that reaching a higher level of power would eventually humble her. But seeing her now, he can only assume the workload finally broke her spirit. Fenia can only sweat, unable to answer her superior's questions. The Tower Master confirms that Count Palladio closed the time gate, but she's bound by an oath and can't reveal how he did it. She can only look down, admitting there's nothing more she can say. He muses that whatever broke her legendary arrogance must be origin magic. She's so defeated she doesn't even swat his hand away. The Tower Master finds this Count Palladio to be a very interesting man. A month passes since Elon's return from the Blue Tower. With his new artifact, his research has accelerated dramatically. He's even discovered new rules for combining incantations. He explains that the order of incantations seems to be the key. Evan interrupts, noting that his master's magic grows stronger every day. He admits it never felt like second circle magic to begin with, but now it's powerful enough to leave massive craters in the earth. Alon seems completely oblivious, wondering if it's all in his head. He knows it's not from simple practice, which only improves precision, and incantations are just activation words that alter a spell's properties. His own research confirms that even optimal arrangements offer only a slight boost. He dismisses it as a fluke, just as Evan arrives with Utia's latest letter. Our boy thanks him, ready to catch up on the latest news from the kids. Evan asks if he's already finished for the day. Alon ponders what could be making his magic stronger. Ruling out a dark ritual he read about, he briefly considers the idea of receiving faith, but dismisses it as completely ridiculous. He decides it's best to just ignore the mystery for now. Meanwhile, in the Holy Kingdom of Rosario, within the hallowed halls of the Eastern Prayer House, a holy knight greets one of the sisters. It's Utia, who offers a chillingly familiar smile. The knight notes that she's just a nun with no official rank. Yet he bows before her with the utmost respect. He reports on the many lives he's saved, giving her all the credit. Utia humbly deflects the praise, saying he was the one who did the work. He insists she gave him guidance when he was nothing, all in the name of the Great Moon, and for that he will always be grateful. The scene flashes back to a time his sword fell from his grasp. He was just another defeated knight, broken and alone, until a soft voice offered him a new path forward. Utia stood before him, her eyes glowing red as she told him to believe in the moon. The knight was skeptical, questioning this new moon. But Utia promised him that belief would bring understanding. She told him that with enough conviction, anything was possible. And after praying for days, he was suddenly blessed with divine power. He admits his guilt for abandoning his goddess for this new faith. But the power was undeniable, his sacred tools now glowing with holy light. And so, he offered his prayers to a new lunar deity. He later asks Utia why she pointed him down this path. She explains that faith is easier when it comes from something tangible. And for her, that tangible power is the Great Moon, a power that is always by their side. The knight agrees, reasoning that the goddess is also the moon. It's a way to give certainty to a human heart filled with doubt. He bows deeply, thanking her for this newfound clarity. Utia tells him that if he truly wishes to express his gratitude, he should join her in prayer, her smile looking anything but holy. The knight agrees without hesitation, his loyalty now absolute. She notes that since it's prayer time, many have already gathered. The two of them walk down the aisle of a packed prayer hall. She steps forward, ready to lead her new flock. She stands before the altar in a grand purple-lit prayer hall. Stepping up to the lectern, she prepares to address her flock. She raises her hand, calling on everyone to pray to their great and undeniably beautiful new god. Her eyes glow as she leads the prayer to the Great Moon. Meanwhile, Evan is on mail duty, finding another letter for Elon. Back in his study, Elon reads the latest update from the children. but he finds the contents to be disappointingly normal. Of course, he's glad they're doing well, but he was hoping for more. He admits he's a little lonely, since only Utia ever writes to him. He reasons that to the kids he's just a kind, unseen uncle. And since he's already saved the world, there's no reason to feel disappointed. He tries to focus on the positive, grateful that Utia still writes every month. But he can't help feeling like an unappreciated father, though he quickly insists he's fine. His brooding is suddenly interrupted by Evan, who startles him out of his chair. Alon awkwardly tries to regain his composure, asking why his knight is still there. Evan explains he has an urgent report from the Information Guild about the children. He begins his update on Radan, the one Alon was most curious about. And the news is that the boy has apparently become a pirate. Alon demands a full report, imagining a letter from the future sin of Mysophobia, who is now apparently a swashbuckler. Evan explains that Seolang and Deus are the ones making the biggest waves. Seolang has already racked up an impressive 32 consecutive wins in the arena. Alon is stunned, recalling the current champion is the Lion King with 41 wins. He remembers that same Lion King as an overpowered companion from the game. In a land filled with powerhouses, he wonders if she'll soon be at the very top. Evan then moves on to the news about Deus's Knight Order. It seems they've already taken down a powerful barbarian chieftain. He asks Alon if he knows about these superhumans forged by dark rituals. A fearsome warrior, a product of this very process. Alon knows them all too well, remembering a brutal quest line from the game. He's just glad he won't have to deal with that particular quest line. Evan confirms that Deus's latest achievement puts him on par with the legendary First Sword. Alon briefly wonders if he should have visited in person for the sweet, sweet in-game benefits. Evan then moves on to Rhine, the appraiser who enhances relics with mysterious black engravings, a detail that clearly piques Alon's interest. But then he asks the question he's been dreading, what about Radan, the supposed pirate? Evan confirms the rumors are true. Radan is in the Seven Archipelagos, a notorious pirate haven, and has apparently become the captain ruling over the largest of the 7 islands. A revelation that completely shatters Alon's composure. He realizes a ridiculous fan theory he once read has somehow become his actual life. Alon insists that becoming a pirate was not part of the plan. He remembers that according to the game's lore, Radan was from a rare sea god race, and with the Laxus seas full of relics, he'd recommended a career as a treasure hunter. But Evan points out that a pirate captain is basically a lord, and Radan is now a big shot. Alon asks the obvious question, how did Radan take down the previous captain? After all, the 7 pirate captains are all superhuman warriors, and their forces are said to be undefeated in naval combat. But then, a thought occurs to him, what if Radan found all the best ancient relics? He recalls grinding the treasure hunter minigame for overpowered gear, realizing Radan must have stat-checked his way to the top. He knows life rarely goes according to plan, but this is just getting ridiculous. Evan can only watch as Alon collapses, feeling the bitter sting of a father whose kid chose piracy. The story shifts to the massive maritime city of Laxus, a tropical paradise known as the Pirates' 7 Paradises. And at its heart, the largest of them all, the First Archipelago. The previous ruler, the great pirate Redslayer Alcride, has been defeated. And the one who took his place is none other than Radan, the new captain of the First Archipelago. He looks out over his new domain, his expression unreadable. But even with all this power, he admits he can't figure something out. He wonders what their master, the Great Moon, truly is. He admits he never thought much about his master, seeing him as just a kind uncle. After all, his time with the Blue Moon was spent simply following Utia's lead. So when a direct order came from the Great Moon himself, he found it completely baffling. He couldn't understand the point of becoming a simple treasure hunter. He was reluctant, his mind consumed by the need for swift revenge. A revenge against the dark forces that destroyed his home and slaughtered his people, who had lived in peace on a hidden island. He remembers escaping to the continent only to be hunted down. His own exhausted parents were forced to sell him into slavery, a memory that left him broken, with nothing but a thirst for vengeance. He believed that becoming a treasure hunter had nothing to do with his quest for revenge. But for now, he would at least pretend to follow his master's orders. His brooding is interrupted by a loud celebration out on the water. He turns to see a wall of wanted posters, his eyes locking onto the faces. It's a festival for the pirates, a celebration of their power and influence. They offer tribute to a so-called heavenly king for their blessings. But Radan knows the truth. These are the very people who destroyed his life. This heavenly king is nothing but a lie they've spread to the world. Their power comes from a dark ritual, using the bodies of his own people, a sacred power stolen through sacrifice, and he will not rest until he finds those responsible. He remembers the hunters who celebrated their bounties with fireworks, the ones who divided his parents' bodies into 7 pieces and took them for themselves. A memory that fuels an ocean of rage within him. Now he watches over the sea, his path finally clear. But he can't help but wonder how his master knew. He never told anyone the details of his tragic past. It's as if the Great Moon orchestrated this entire path for his revenge. But he knows he can't strike them down just yet, because these superhumans wield the stolen power of the sea god. He realizes that if everything was intentional, then the gift he received must also have a purpose. The Great Moon must have arranged this entire path, setting the perfect stage for his revenge. And with that, his faith in his master becomes absolute. The scene shifts to a bright tropical cliffside, as Radon takes a step into the open air and dives from the towering cliff into the ocean below. He sinks into the depths, a silent descent, until the pendant around his neck begins to glow with a brilliant light. The Great Moon's gift, Amrita's goggles, activates in the water. It was a tool that made it easy to find relics in the deep sea and use their power to make up for his own weaknesses. He emerges from the ocean, his treasure hunt now complete. He realizes he wasn't just grateful, he was foolishly short-sighted, because the Great Moon had kept his promise in every single way. He didn't just place the targets of his revenge right before him. He also granted him the power to see that revenge through, and now Radon finally understands his master's true intention: to take his revenge and seize control of the 7 archipelagos. He reminds himself that everything he does is for the Great Moon, his unseen master. Words that once held no emotion now shine with absolute trust. A new conviction is engraved deep within his heart. Everything is for the Great Moon. And so, Radon stands alone on the shore, his purpose renewed. 3 months later, as autumn arrives, Alon is dragged to a grand social event he'd rather skip. Their carriage makes its way through the vibrant countryside. Evan reports that 2 other noble families have joined them. He finds the local custom of traveling in groups for safety to be a complete hassle. But that evening, he would learn something important. As he sits in a local inn trying to mind his own business, he realizes his real problem isn't bandits, but the other nobles who see him as a lucky fool. He can only listen as they mock him, wishing they'd at least have the decency to do it behind his back. After all, the Palatio family's power was built on their control of the eastern underworld. But Alon had willingly given that up, content with his new, lazy life. And because of that power vacuum, the eastern underworld is now being carved up by lesser criminals, fueling the rumors that he's just a fluke. His reputation as a mastermind has faded, replaced by the image of a lucky fool, but he knows the truth. The nobles mock his lack of funds with fake tears and smug offers. Alon is surprised they'd have the nerve to say it to his face, but his expression remains as unreadable as ever. He wonders if he stumbled into a Palladio victim support group. He realizes they're just venting grievances from his family's past, but he knows he's never done anything to them personally. Just then, Evan arrives with a snack, admiring their dedication to being annoying. Alon decides to ignore them as Evan explains he was just getting some food. The offering is some delicious-looking roasted corn, and so the 2 of them enjoy their snack, completely unfazed. The nobles continue their diss track, mocking his inability to manage his family's assets. But Alon finds their pathetic attempts at insults almost musical. He and Evan just enjoy their snack, completely unbothered by the background noise. As night falls over the quiet inn, our story shifts to the desolate northern lands, a frozen waste ruled by barbarians, a cursed place where the snow is stained by the fallen. Here, one of the great barbarian chieftains lies defeated. He curses the Knights of Caliburn for their dishonorable tactics. For a barbarian, a glorious death in battle is the highest honor. But this was no honorable fight. It was a cowardly ambush, a duel that was nothing but a trap. The barbarian chieftain clutches his chest, his final moments at hand. He collapses into the snow, his reign brought to a sudden end. This was Kurga of the Snowfields, now just another body in the frozen waste. All that's left are broken blades and the faint glow of puppet strings. He laments his disgraceful end, unable to even die in peace. But a dark presence calls out to him, a voice from the beyond. It tells him to call upon its great name one last time, to speak the name that he once revered above all others. And with his dying breath, he calls out for Lord Ultultus, as a strange symbol appears in the cold, unforgiving sky. The barbarian chieftain collapses, his body falling limp in the snow. His hand twitches, a final, desperate grasp at the frozen earth. But his body begins to rise, pulled upward by an unseen force. A voice calls out, invoking the name of the great god, Ultultus. And from the shadows, a divine being descends to answer the call. It offers a terrifying smile, promising to grant the summoner's desire. Back with Alan, the awkward journey continues through the countryside, and the mockery from the other nobles doesn't let up for a second. But Alan simply ignores them, following basic gamer etiquette. Don't feed the trolls. He finds a moment of peace by a stream, catching a fish for dinner. The nobles decide to make camp for the night. A clear winner emerges in the Battle of Wills, and it's not the guy throwing a tantrum. The nobles confirm Alan only has a single knight with him. They decide the rumors of him being an empty shell must be true. With Alan out of the way, they can finally expand their own criminal enterprises. They dream of the power and wealth that will soon be theirs. One suggests they should teach the boy a lesson about the real world. The two of them share a smug, self-satisfied laugh. But their celebration is cut short by the arrival of armed soldiers, and from the darkness, a horde of monsters emerges to greet them. A knight shouts an order to switch to mage's sight. A mage in their party raises a wand to the sky, unleashing a flare of golden light. It illuminates a horde of crystal-studded goblins. The soldiers question if these are just ordinary goblins, but the arrogant noble scoffs, dismissing the threat entirely. Goblins are usually weak, common forest monsters. But when their numbers are this overwhelming, even seasoned knights can fall, and suddenly that smug noble isn't looking so smug anymore. The battlefield is already littered with the fallen. The noble realizes the entire Outer Watch has been silently eliminated. These are no ordinary goblins, they're something new and terrifying. A mutated breed infused with raw mana, and with a powerful first strike. They prove their physical abilities are on a completely different level. The horde charges forward with blinding speed. The knights can barely hold their formation against the onslaught. The battle quickly devolves into a desperate, chaotic melee. And these monsters are just getting started. A massive vortex of energy suddenly erupts on the battlefield. The noble's mage is stunned, realizing another caster is at work. It's Alan, calmly casting an enhancement spell. The arrogant noble can only stare in disbelief at the display. Alan continues his incantation, compressing the raw mana. He unleashes a wave of destructive energy across the field. The spell tears through the goblin horde with absolute ease. But he's not finished, gathering a massive sphere of power in the sky. The other knights can only watch, forming a defensive line behind him. Alan stands before the horde, ready to end this fight. He clenches his fist, invoking a new incantation. Vacuum. The spell creates a powerful vortex, pulling in the very earth. He reaches out, commanding the elements to return to their origin. The bracelet on his wrist glows, fueling this impossible display. A wave of pure force rips through the goblin horde. He stands calmly amidst the chaos, his work not yet done. The two arrogant nobles can only stare in absolute terror. Even their seasoned knights are frozen in disbelief. Alan tells them to snap out of it and prepare for the next wave. And with his command, the soldiers ready their blades for battle. The knights charge into the fray, cutting down the mutated goblins. Alan raises his hand, his bracelet glowing with immense power. He unleashes another devastating spell, clearing a path through the horde. A blur of red light flashes across the battlefield, as Evan unleashes his own powerful sword technique. As the sun begins to rise, the battle finally comes to an end. The last of the monsters are swiftly dispatched by the weary knights. The ground is littered with the remains of the goblin army. The arrogant noble peeks out, stunned that the fight is actually over. Evan and the other knights catch their breath, exhausted but victorious. The knights can only stare, wondering who this person truly is. Alan stands amidst the carnage, questioning what just happened. But internally, he's a complete mess, realizing he almost died. Even with his new artifact, he can only cast a few spells before he's completely spent. Evan approaches, asking if he's hurt, but Alan insists he's fine. He was terrified of losing the ability to protect himself in the fight. He's just glad he traveled with the nobles, despite their constant nagging. But his attention turns to a massive amethyst, the true source of the problem. He wonders why a divine descent happened here, a phenomenon where an outer lord tries to enter their world. An event that causes nearby monsters to become far more vicious and powerful. Alan can only stare, wondering how any of this is even possible. According to the game, these outer lords should only appear after the world's laws have collapsed. Their arrival foreshadows a future of absolute destruction. But since the children never became the sins, he can't understand what went wrong. He resolves to start gathering information as soon as they arrive. Because if this keeps up, his own head will be on the chopping block. Meanwhile, the arrogant nobles are having a complete mental breakdown. The next day, their carriage finally pulls up to the Rotegre ducal estate. Alan steps out, exhausted but relieved to have finally made it. And with that, the grand social event has officially begun. Evan practically has to carry him inside, as Alan just wants to go home and sleep.